Real estate is not a cash flow rich industry. It is a money making business.
My dad's name is saved as Anarock Chairman.
From morning to evening, what you do is sell, pitch, talk, articulate. That's what you do.
When you started it in Dubai, how was your pitching journey?
They're big guys, and if we win this account, then we're in. What he didn't tell me is if we lose that account, then we're nowhere in Dubai because they have that much power.
People are just crazy about investing in Dubai. I think it's really a marketing stunt, or they're actually giving some good value to the real estate.
They'll not even sort of entertain you if they haven't seen either your profile on social media before.
Can you just tell me more about your 72 hours?
I think that's something that's going to disrupt the industry.
When you start fresh, you don't know anything.
And that only comes through a generational set of values being passed.
It is a game of all the builders and the developers.
There are no rules.
What about the Bombay boy? Is it still alive?
Dubai or India?
What's the next question?
So today we have managed to hijack who is someone very special. Aayush Puri with me, founder of Anacity and also leading Anarock channel partner. Most important thing about this podcast is that I also belong from real estate. So I think we are going to have a lot of fun today.
Yeah, hopefully. Thanks for inviting me.
So how's life treating you?
Yeah, good. I just escaped the war zone, so back in India. As long as I'm safe, I'm happy. Yeah.
So do you miss Dubai going back there?
Yeah, I think I've become one of those people who spends 15 days in India and then is like, Dubai is cleaner air, better roads, and then after 15 days in Dubai, I'm like, family is better. Good to spend time in India. So 50-50.
The most important question which I was excited about, when I was actually researching about this podcast was, whenever we talk about real estate, especially, a layman always thinks that, it is a game of all the builders and the developers. But I think Anarock is the company who taught me that you can do anything. And even if you're not a builder or a developer, you can rock in real estate. Do you take this legacy as a leverage, or it is a kind of a pressure for you?
Honestly, it opens the door much faster. And it'll be indigenous to assume that it doesn't, right? So whichever industry, right? And a lot of people talk about this largely in the entertainment industry, that, your last name carries a certain weight. I honestly don't think that nepotism is something it is definitely a challenge, but you need to use it to your advantage, right? So it definitely opens the door, but it also brings scrutiny to the table a lot faster. A lot of people judge what you say before you say it. They assume just because of, your family legacy. I think if you work that to your advantage, it is definitely a lot more helpful because you can then use that network to build something and start from a place where, possibly people would start from -1 or from 0. You're getting the opportunity or you're getting the platform to start from a, 30 or a 40.
I also think that, it is also kind of a pressure in terms of, because nepotistic is something which is more pressureful situations because you have to go beyond those limits and do something in your lives.
Just to add, I think maybe starting from scratch is sometimes a bit easier because, we've done both. So I've also started from scratch and now joined we don't call it family legacy. It's still a multinational company. It's an IPC. So, but at the same time, with starting from scratch, there are no rules. Things are a lot more fluid.
You have traveled the world, obviously Harvard and USA, Dubai. What about the Bombay boy? Is it still alive?
Yeah, so definitely, I always come back. As you said, I've been in the US, I've been in London, in Dubai, in Europe. I was working there for a short period of time. But somehow the power I hear or something, I don't know what, but it always brings me back to Bombay. So, after spending maybe a couple of months or a year or a couple of weeks now in Dubai, I always look to come back home, always look to have that home food, always look to get back into that home routine. Yeah, I think it's definitely there, and maybe you have to spend some more time with me, or
To see your...
the Bombay-ness, the Mumbaikar out of me.
So you did your schooling from Bombay only?
I did my schooling from
which
yeah.
school?
I was at Jamnabai Nursery School. Yeah, so I was a Jew boy.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I still want to know about your Bombay things. What you used to do in your school time.
Same, what
You
everyone
like Bombay
else.
food?
Yeah, I love the food here.
Yeah.
I love it. But same thing what most of the students would do. So I had done all the hawkers next to the school. So now sometimes when I think about it, it's kind of odd. But we had that chocolate bar. I don't know what do you call it, uh, chocho or something.
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah,
said it
yeah.
here. Yeah, and the hawker used to sell it. And imagine, I would have it and then I would lick the whole thing. And that guy's sweat, dust, everything is on it, but somehow it tasted really good. And, that's obviously something that you still miss because now you've become a lot more conscious and health conscious. Unfortunately, I bought this health tracking device,
Yeah,
which
even I
now
use
tells
it.
me every single thing I do, so. But I still love Bombay and I still love India. And, I'm eventually in the long term, I would definitely come back and settle here.
Whenever it comes to the fathers, I belong from a business family. Whenever my father teaches me something, I think I don't learn, but I learn when I see him working, when I observe him. So, any dinner table advice or some non-verbal learnings from your father?
So, growing up, a lot of people would think that, or would assume that the dinner table conversations would be about cap rates, about land deals, about square footage. But somehow it was, we're a Punjabi family. So it was less about that, more gossipy, more about weddings, more about, who's doing what, who we are meeting next, what's for food, what's for dinner. And that's something that definitely stayed with me in the long term, because also when you talk about the next wedding, the next event, the next party, there's a lot more to that conversation, because you slowly come to realize that real estate, our entire family is involved in the fraternity. So real estate is a lot more about networking. It's a lot more people driven. It is a lot more about trust. So less actively, I think actively I wouldn't have spent as much time with my dad in the workspace, and consciously so, because somehow it's a contrary take that if I spend a lot of time with him, then I'll have a similar path to him. So you reach a certain ceiling when you start observing your dad or observing your mentor, and you start sort of mimicking their actions or behaving in a certain way that they would, or take decisions similar to that, the decisions they would take. For me, it was less about that, but more so if I spend so much time with him or with a mentor, I would reach the same ceiling that they have reached, right? And to break that would then be difficult, because I wouldn't have my own set of thinking. Two things growing up, it was less about, people think I would know, cap rates and land deals that are happening. I knew a lot about the retail side, because I would always like to know where the next restaurant is opening up and, where we can go to sort of go for events. So that was one side of it. And then the second is also consciously, this is contrary to what a lot of other people would do, which is right after college, come back, start working in the business. For me, it was less that, and try to build something of my own, or build at least, whether a company or, a startup, but at least an identity of my own.
And something related to values.
So values is something you can't ignore, because as growing up, it is something that's there in all aspects of your life, right? So whether it is professionally, whether it is academically, or just in terms of your family. So we're a very close-knit family where, four of us, my sisters just got married. But we would always have lunch and dinner on Sunday together, right? So, and no phones on the table. In that, you hear a lot about, how your parents talk to each other. You see how they talk to their parents. So, for example, not a lot of people know this, but my dad calls his mom every evening when he leaves from work.
Oh, that is so good.
Yeah, so he speaks to her all the way till he gets home. And a lot of times I try to call her at the same time, and she's like, "Oh, my son is calling me. Let me disconnect the phone." Right. So you see the close bond that they have, even though she lives in Delhi. He's moved here maybe 30 years ago, 35 years ago. He's moved to Mumbai. But still, that closeness is there, and that only comes through a generational set of values being passed on.
I think being an entrepreneur, the most important thing which I have always felt was something related to pitching. So from morning to evening, what you do is sell, pitch, talk, articulate. That's what you do.
Yeah.
When it comes to Anacity, when you started it in Dubai, how was your pitching journey? I think that is something which I'm intrigued to know about.
So I've spoken about this a couple of times, but somehow that one example has stayed with me. So I'll, articulate it again for you. When we started initially, it was a lot more going to the same meetings, talking with the same people, trying to convince them that a certain pain point that they have is invisible, right? Just because it's normalized in their day-to-day life. For us, the challenge was to make that problem from being invisible to being visible. So the initial part of it is very exciting, which is the entrepreneurial spirit, where you set up, you have that adrenaline rush where you're going and meeting new people, you have a certain energy. And after meeting the same people 10 times, to bring the same kind of enthusiasm, respect, patience to the meeting is very difficult. One of the examples that I'll talk about is when we had just started, I had hired from one of my competitors, and these guys were probably in their mid 30s. I was like in my early 20s. I don't think they knew that I was in my early 20s. I had a full beard at that time, full set. And, I was following the fake it till you make it kind of proposition. But we had gone for, I think it was the second meeting that we went for. And it was a large account, which was currently with that particular competitor. And, this sales guy had come in. He still works with us. We still work very closely. He had come in and he said, let's go and meet these guys. And they're big guys. And, if we win this account, then we're in. What he didn't tell me is if we lose that account, then we're nowhere in Dubai because they have that much power. And so we went, we had that meeting. I gave my business card. So that guy looked at my business card. He read my name and he said, it's a startup. I said, yeah. And he gave me the card and he continued working. And so I was going on pitching it, saying that, look, we're a property sort of technology company.
He was looking into you, or you were like...
No, he was, so he gave the card and then he continued working, right? And so my sales guy is looking at me and I'm looking at that guy. And, I kept going on and talking about what Anacity does and how we solve problems and, where is our value add in this ecosystem. After about 7-8 minutes, he looks at me, he says, oh, you haven't left? That's the door. And so I walked out and my sales guy came out with me and he looks at me and I could see him contemplating, ki, boss, I made the wrong decision by joining this kid. I don't know what he's doing. I had a stable job. I left that job. But somehow he told me that, Aayush, let's go back to him. He comes here every day, right? This is his office. He comes here every day. He comes in at about 9:30. Let's come here every morning for a week. Right. So I said, okay. I mean, there was nothing else, right? Because we didn't have a single client, largest account. So we knew that in case we won this, we would have sort of accelerated growth that we could have over the next 5 years. So I said, okay, let's come here. Went there every week for every 9 a.m. to about 11 a.m. We were there. Sort of sat outside his office and it was only him, right? On that entire floor. Sat outside his office and he used to come in. We were sitting outside on the sofa. He used to come and ignore us, go, have his meetings, leave in about 2-3 hours. He would only come to 2-3 hours at that particular site. And did that for a week, nothing at all. And then I could see my sales guy getting nervous, saying that maybe, I'm pretty sure he had started reaching out to consultants by the Friday of that week. And I told him, look, I'm going to come here every week for the next 3 weeks. I'll continue paying you. Don't worry. If you're looking out, that's fine. And he said, look, I have nothing else to do. I'll come along with you. So for 3 weeks plus the 1 week before, 4 weeks. So, an entire month. Honestly, it was before Ramadan. We went entire month, sort of Feb to March. We sat outside his office every morning. We were there sharp around between 9:15 to 9:30. And I'm not even sort of dramatizing it for the podcast. We would go in there, sit every week, sort of every day. And on the last day, one day before Ramadan, he came in, he sat in his office, same thing. And then he walks out and he looks at us. He's like, oh, are you waiting for me? And I was like, we've been here 1 month. This floor is only you. There's nobody else. Yes, we've been waiting for you. He says, okay, you can walk me to the car. I said, okay.
It's like walk and talk.
Yeah, walk and talk. So it was kind of like that elevator pitch, right? What you're talking about. And I had rehearsed this so many times that, in case he comes, in case I get a chance to speak with him, I gave him that elevator pitch. It was literally in the elevator. We were going down, spoke to him. He starts walking towards his car and he says, it's a very good idea. Why don't you connect with my team and maybe we can do something together? I think about 4 or 5 months later, the government announced us as official partners for this particular property sort of technology software to the Dubai government, which means that any developer then coming into Dubai has to evaluate us as a platform or find their own alternative
Mhm.
or try to build it in-house. So it was genuinely, we went from, at that time we had one client. From that, we, were starting to get calls from developers, and, they were saying, look, we're interested in this product. Can you come and can you pitch? So it was something that we had never imagined at that time. But one of the learnings from me was that persistence is key. A lot of people talk about this, but I think one of the largest aspects was that keep going even after things stop looking as sexy anymore. I met, so he's a very close friend now. He's a client of ours. I met him, I think last year, December. And I candidly asked him that, why is it that, you had made me suffer so much? I was only, probably like 20, 21. And he said, because I wanted to see that, you're such a young kid. You've come in with this idea. Maybe something else excites you and you move on. So I genuinely wanted to see. And he said, I knew the opportunity I had and I knew the platform I could give you. But, it's that thing with great power comes great responsibility kind of a motto that he was running on. Probably I hated him for the first, those 30, 40, 60 days, 3 months. But eventually, when you look back, all the pieces of the puzzle start to align.
So, I mean, when you actually talk about, pitching, waiting, I've been doing this for a couple of years now from the lens of entrepreneurship. ये ज़रूरी है. I think when you just go, hustle, wait, maybe it won't teach you the subject, but it will make you stronger.
Yeah.
And so do you think it is like must? It should happen with everyone.
Honestly, I wouldn't wish for it to happen with anyone else, but
you told us, right, that it changed you.
Yeah,
After
definitely.
3 months, you finally used it,
Correct.
started liking that person.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe everyone has their own learning. Maybe for others it's slightly easier and they're able to sort of pick up this. But yes, you're not born with that leadership capability. So unless somebody puts you in those uncomfortable positions, you'll never really put yourself out there and try to learn those things in terms of your own experience. It has to possibly happen to you once, and that's when you'll become, as you rightly said, a lot more stronger. So I remember a lot of meetings or events that I used to go to. People would have a closed conversation, in a circle, and I would be okay to, go in there and introduce myself. Because I realized nobody's going to come and introduce themselves to me, right? And I didn't know anyone there. So it put me in a position where I was open to going and introducing myself. I think that was the hardest, to go. And a lot of people, who want to start early, a lot of entrepreneurs and young people who have a lot of ambition, for them, image means a lot, right? For them, optics means a lot. They don't really want to go up and take that step.
Correct. I think that was my point.
Something
Yeah.
about being, egoistical in some sense.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Especially when it comes with having either a family background or a legacy.
I think when we actually talk about Dubai, people are just crazy about investing in Dubai, especially in India. So I have two questions here. One, is it really a marketing fluff? And I personally think that, people who are going and investing in Dubai, they should also invest in India. I think especially in tier 2, because the entry point is not that high when it comes to India. And obviously now the war is going on. Unfortunately, the situations are different. But what do you think? Like, people are going crazy about investing in Dubai. Let's assume that there's no war. So
Yeah. So I think somebody mentioned this. I don't know. I think it was maybe somebody from your team, or I read this somewhere, which was that if you invest, if you're asked to, you get maybe 12% return by investing in tier 2 versus you get 5% by investing in Dubai. A lot of people migrate towards investing in Dubai. And many times people come to me and say it's a higher yield, it's better returns, it's safer returns. And the same people are then, I find them at having a brunch or at a beach club or looking for the golden visa. So I think it's a lot more about lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? You invest
more than return, I think
Correct.
it's
Yeah.
related to lifestyle also. Yes.
I think that's where Dubai has kind of won in terms of optics, or in terms of the marketing that they've done is really well. They look at the country also as a business, which is fantastic for the economy. Tier 2 is also very exciting. Anarock's large share comes from these tier 2 cities, selling in these tier 2 cities.
Can you name some cities?
So like, the city where you're from, Raipur, Jaipur, Lucknow. We have a large office in Lucknow. In fact, a lot of our personal investments are in that city as well.
Oh.
And we see it's safe returns. The only thing is that for a market this size, there is a lot of friction, unfortunately. However, with RERA coming in 2016, a lot of these things have, there is now data transparency, there is less misinformation. Maybe I'd say there's also too much data out there. Which then means that, the same thing people go and, they would then call their family friend, or they would then call their chacha and ask, "Ki, what do you think? Is this a good deal? Should I put in money here or not?" Even how much ever information you share with them, they need that emotional support to then say that, yes, I'm making the right decision. Yes, it is a fantastic market. I mean, I moved there in about 2020, and for us, Anacity has grown 350% over the last couple of years. And it is not because we did something differently, right? It is just we've been keeping up with the market. And the market has been growing. And because of that, we're blessed to grow with the market as well.
So don't you think it is also some point of time, it is also hitting the saturation?
So it'll be bad for my business if I say that. But a lot of brokers, would say that, no, it's a great market and it's not going to get saturated. And to be honest, it's, if you see New York or London, it's maybe another 400-500% growth than where Dubai is. And people look at Dubai as the next London, right? Or the next New York, or sort of the next big city and the next big city for real estate. So yes, it has a lot of growth potential, but you have to go back and see the historical data that it's also grown a lot. I would say that now what's taking place is sellers who were asking for, let's say, 20 crore, 30 crore, right? That was their asking price. When someone comes in to buy, a buyer would say, yes, I'll buy it instead of 20, I'll buy it at 16 or 17 crores. That guy would then say that, okay, let's close at 19. You come, you sign, you try to sign at 19. He says, no, actually, I want 21. Because now he's seen that you're willing to sign at 19. Somebody comes with 21. The seller says, I'm asking for 23. Versus now, that same guy who, the seller who was saying that I'm not interested, I have enough cash flow, this is not an urgent sell for me. That same guy is now coming to us and saying that, by the way, I lost my job last year in November. So this sale is important for me. So I'm happy to close at 18. But he's not saying that I'm happy to close at 14 or 15.
Correct.
So it is not a dip in the market. It is not a saturation per se, but it is a slight correction that's going to take place.
I think whenever you talk about those brands, like, you are collaborating with BMW, Ferrari, I think also Jacobs and Company. So do you think it's really a marketing stunt, or they're actually giving some good value to the real estate? मतलब अलग क्या ही है?
You're putting me in a tough place. A lot of them are clients. But so, Dubai as a market now, if you see the skyline, unfortunately, there's a lot of other stuff that's happening in the sky right now. But in Dubai, if you see the skyline, the architecture is such that there are companies, developers from China, from Russia, from India, from the US. And if you see the skyline, it's like each architectural companies or the development companies are competing with each other, right? So now, how is it that you make it different? See, it's a market where you get everything in sort of the most luxury format. Everyone is competing with each other. The global benchmarks are much more visible, right? Because you have each and every country having a developer, having a particular project in Dubai. But that also means then differentiation is harder, right? Innovation is harder.
Correct.
So because of that, companies now look at more marketing kind of aspects or stints wherein they bring in a big brand name.
Correct.
And brand name comes with loyalty, so it helps their sales.
I think yes, yeah.
So usme that's the one of the advantages by partnering up with these brands. But somehow, I personally haven't seen as much differentiation. There's a brand which I wouldn't name, but it's a lot about gold and it's white, and I went to their project, and from the floor to ceiling, everything is gold. So it is great in Insta, but I wouldn't want to wake up every day and brush my teeth in a gold sink with a gold tap and gold water coming out of that. So somehow I would say it's
typically a shake thing to
correct,
do.
yeah. So you really hijacked me with these questions.
But what do you think about the current scenario? अभी तो war चल रही है sir, so कब तक ठीक होगा ये?
इसमें थोड़ा time लगेगा. See, the kind of impact that it's had in Dubai, nobody would have imagined, right? I myself, the day it all started, I was out at the gym, and then I look at it and I say, and also, I was telling people that don't really talk about it a lot. So if somebody would call me, they would say, Diwali chal rahi hai. I said, हाँ चल रही है अभी. So, you know, but
Diwali chal rahi hai.
it
That's
is,
nice.
you know, it is something that will take some time to
Yeah.
bring back the image of Dubai. But it is a country that's been resilient through the financial crisis, through COVID. It is definitely going to bounce back, right? And the kind of investment that's there in Dubai, the kind of investment the government is willing to put in Dubai, it is just a country you cannot ignore. It will have two ways. Either it's going to bounce back higher than the levels after COVID, which means you're going to sort of make X, Y, Z amount of return, 10x, 20x of what you invested. And personally, that's my thought, and which is why we are doubling down as Anarock. We're expanding into Dubai. So we're setting up our entire commercial, residential, advisory, capital markets, all the residential and institutional businesses we're setting up in Dubai. I personally have huge amount of investments in Dubai, and we're continuing to double down on those investments. क्योंकि हमें लगता है that in the next 1 or 2 years, the country is going to bounce back, and the way it will come back will be sort of 4-5x of what it was previously.
I think, Ayush, we often talk about disrupting real estate with tech. You know, I think you have spoken about this a lot. Being into real estate, before I started real estate, I always thought, I'll do something in technology. But sir, मुझे लगता है कि जब तक visits नहीं आती है कुछ होता ही नहीं है. So, do you think like the sales will happen, the deals will happen without the visit, especially in India?
मुश्किल है. So it
मुश्किल
is, it is a trust-driven. We've spoken about this, but it is a trust-driven industry. Real estate traditionally has been a trust-driven industry, and it hasn't had the need to digitize. But with the new age buyer sellers, which I call the Spotify generation, right? Because they want everything on demand, right? They want to check EMIs online. They'll not even sort of entertain you if they haven't seen either your profile on social media before, right?
Correct.
They'll not pick up a sales guy's call. Projects now are not launched unless they are launched on Instagram. And I said this in a panel that somehow it applies for couples also. You're not an official couple unless you posted a picture on Instagram. So somehow both have its sort of advantages and disadvantages, which is that yes, technology is now disrupting because, or I wouldn't say even disrupting, it's evolving the industry because the new age buyers sellers are coming in, right? But at the same time, there is so much technology in the market or so much information in the market that it is easy to then be misguided, right? And if you blindly trust in terms of, so much we hear about AI being a sexy word and PropTech being sexy. And if you really deep dive into it, there is a lot of uncertainty with the kind of products that are coming out in the market. People are creating solutions for problems that never existed. And that's something you have to be wary about because it's easy to spend money in real estate. I mean, you know that you run a large marketing agency. So in digital, it's easy to spend. And if somebody comes and convinces you, look, boss, I'll give you X amount of return and this is how much you have to invest. For some of the older generation, it is easy to convince them in a certain area where they then say, yes, we want to be tech savvy, we want to connect with the younger generation, so let's put in money in this. But somehow it's like a sort of sword with a double-sided edge to it. So technology will disrupt. It is disrupting. Unfortunately or fortunately, real estate is the last industry to be disrupted. We've seen this in every single fraternity, that whether it's insurance, whether it's food, whether it's aggregators, every industry is being sort of aggregated or being disrupted by technology. You see Zepto, you see
I think
Uber,
everything,
Ola.
everything. The most important thing would be you need a shelter to sleep. You can't sleep in AI.
Yeah.
You need a home. So
Correct.
yes, I think,
True.
yeah, you're right.
That metaverse came, a lot of people were also sleeping in AI. And, they had that, what were those glasses?
Yeah,
But yeah, it's tough too.
Yeah. So, when it comes to the Gen Zs, the Spotify generation you're talking about, do you think are they the decision maker when it comes to, because in India, if you talk about a Gen Z, whatever you want, I'll take the call in my family. But when it comes to real estate, when it comes to, buying a property or a residential property or anything, the call will be taken by my father. And the second thing would be, I would like to deal with someone who is a content creator, who educates me about the property, who teaches me about the builder, and also, engage with me something related to the properties. But when it comes to my father, I think because in India we are emotional buyers, everything revolves around us emotionally. So I think my father would choose someone who's a Verma uncle or a Sarma uncle कि आप इनसे ही घर लो जाके, and I think ये आपको best ही दिखाएंगे. So don't you think ये थोड़ा orthodox भी हो गया है कि I think, and if I'll go to my father, I've seen this creator, I just love this. I think we should buy his property, and so I think he'll say कि are you going mad? How do you see the balance between both, because they are not the decision maker, but yet the content creation bubble in real estate is going crazy.
So there's not much difference then between tier 2 and Bombay Boy because it's somewhat similar.
Yeah.
Somehow I got an upper edge when I had mentioned that let's invest in Dubai in 2020 when I moved there.
Yeah.
And I was told ki boss Sharma uncle is not investing, so let's continue to invest in Mumbai and in Delhi. Since then the market has grown tremendously. So now my opinion on the dinner table is a bit more valued. But I wouldn't say my dad is the decision maker. I would say Abhi bhi mummy is the decision maker. So, whatever she says is usually what happens. And especially when it comes to houses and when it comes to buying real estate.
If you were a 20-year-old and wanting to start something in real estate, what would you do?
So right now, I would look at more of the PropTech segment because within real estate, the industry has been operating at a certain pace. I'll talk just about my example. With Anarock, there was an option or an opportunity to come in and join the residential business, come in and join the commercial business, land, advisory, capital markets. But, people have been doing this for the last, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? So for me to come in, there's not much value add that I can do. Versus in the PropTech segment, where the older generation is wary to touch that, right? Very few people have really got acquainted with AI, ML, the language models, how that can help real estate. And I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for the newer generation who's ambitious to come in and try to build something of their own, right? They're diamond, you throw a coin in Mumbai and it lands at a CP firm, right? Which is a good thing. But unfortunately, also that means there is a huge amount of competition in the market. So you have to really do something different if you want to start something of your own. My take was that either I join Anarock and start shadowing the chairman of the company, and I not a lot of people know this, but my dad's name is saved as Anarock Chairman. Right, because before when he used to call me, I used to look at it and he would call at like 8-9 p.m. and I would say he's going to talk about work and he'll ask kya chal raha hai and kaisa hai business. After I changed his name to Anarock Chairman, the minute he calls at 10 p.m. at night, I pick up the phone because he's my boss. So then I, answer the questions as per what he's asked. The opportunity is huge, whether you join into the traditional set of the business, but then it is somewhere where you'll be able to make your mark over the next, many years, 10, 15 years. Unless you do something drastically different, which the opportunity to innovate is much lesser, versus having a PropTech firm where competition is meek right now, but there is huge amount of investment. Real estate as an industry is going to reach 1 trillion by 2030, of which PropTech is about, I would say, 7 to 8 billion, is going to reach about 16 billion in the next 4 to 5 years, right? So the kind of opportunity there, the kind of problems that you can solve versus the amount of talent in the market, there is a huge gap. I recently spoke at IIT Bombay, and we spoke about the sort of new opportunities in real estate in the fraternity. And after the talk, I was amazed to see the amount of people that came up to me and said, look, this is our idea. This is what we are raising funding for. This is the problem. And I would think that, we as Anacity or we as Anarock are solving a huge chunk of the buyer behavior in real estate through PropTech or through digital. Speaking with those guys, there was so much that I had no clue about.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to PropTech, because I'm also building a PropTech, and it's been a year. I've been already working on it because as a CP firm, I also observed this a lot. And when I started real estate, the first thing which I thought was I'll do something in tech. I'll get the best marketing. I'll get the best influencers. I'll create the best visuals. I'll set the best 3D visuals. But in India, especially,
But you are doing the best marketing. I've done a lot of podcasts, but I've never seen such a big team of like 15, 16 people. So I'm sure you're doing something right.
I think that means a lot. But I personally think when you actually go and do real estate, especially on the ground, in India, if you want to be a real estate entrepreneur, correct me if I'm wrong because I want to learn it from you, it's tech plus ground support also. Because I was in the seventh sky, and I thought that I'm going to be rich because when it comes to real estate, the first thing which pops up into my mind is कि अब तो पैसे बनने वाले हैं जो
Correct.
जो होता नहीं है ऐसे जल्दी से. So don't you think, especially in real estate, you need to have the ground knowledge equally with enabling the tech? I think that mixture, that combo makes you more powerful than only tech.
That's something that I realized in about 2023, which is why then I applied to formally educate myself on real estate. And, that's when I went to back for my post grad. Because we had a meeting at that point, we sat in front of the guy and we showed him सब data दिखा दिया उसको कि ऐसे हो सकता है and वो this is the permutation, that's the combination, and either this is what problem we'll solve, and you'll be able to find this capability. One example I can give you is this is for Anacity itself. There was a building in Dubai where the water consumption was like absurd amounts, right? They were consuming, I think, 2 or 3x of the water in a particular month versus the rest of our buildings. And we showed them all of that data, and they then got auditors, they investigated, and it went on for about 2-3 months, right? We also kept analyzing that data. What we found out is there is one very enthusiastic car owner who would wash his car every morning for about an hour. He would sit and keep washing his Rolls Royce and keep washing his number plate. And we are doing some permutation combination of maybe there's a leakage in the pool, maybe there is this HVAC system that you have to replace, this maintenance is due. I kind of realized that yes, tech is good and it can completely absorb you, but at the same time, you need people on ground. I
Correct.
mean, sometimes you're just identifying a simple issue that needs to be solved, right? So it is a simple balance of both. And that's also, at a point where I then decided that, look, I may need a better understanding of real estate in general. And that's kind of my journey, which took me to back to college.
Ayush, I just spoke about it. So I was in London and talking to one of my co-founders, and I was just thinking. I just told you about that how I started my real estate journey. Why I started real estate because I was good at marketing. I think then I thought that if I'm generating leads for a lot of builders, curating content for them, and also selling, stories for them, so why can't I do it for myself? And I was already reading about Anarock. First thing which I learned about real estate was that, correct me if I'm wrong, that real estate is not a cash flow rich industry. It is a money making business. So the cash flows in real estate, it takes a lot of time. So we just keep on waiting for our bills to get clear. It is a pain. Can you just tell me more about your 72 hours payment?
You've done your research on
A
the
bit.
business, yeah. So basically, what Anarock does, or Anarock Channel Partners, it's called ACP. It's an application, which is a free CRM tool for channel partners. So any channel partner can come and sort of download the app and align with us, and they have to tag us at the site visit. What we do is we release their brokerage in 72 hours. Because what we realized is that, look, there are two things. One is, what does a channel partner want? मतलब उसको अपने बेटे को school भेजना है, so he needs to pay the school fees, right? He needs the money on time. He needs to put food on the table, right?
Correct.
For that channel partner, it is not important how much the developer pays, whether the developer pays 2, 3, 4, 5%. The challenge in India is to get that money out, unfortunately, right? And that money is your own hard work money, right? It's due for you. You've put in all the efforts in securing that lead and converting into a site visit and then getting a deal out of it. So that is one pain point which we realized is there in the market, and we said, look, we will release your money in 72 hours. So whichever broker, whichever city in India wants to work with Anarock Channel Partner or ACP, they can go and do their site visit as is. They tag ACP. As soon as we get the tagging from the developer, we release your money in 72 hours. And I think that's something that's going to disrupt the industry. Reason we did this is because we saw insurance aggregators do it. We saw someone like a as simple as Zepto, right? Zepto started aggregating these retailers, Uber started aggregating drivers, and they started giving them more business and quicker payouts. And we said, why not in real estate? That's probably the only industry that's not been aggregated
Yes,
and not been
100%.
disrupted by
Yeah.
these sort of faster payouts. So it's a simple proposition that we have. You continue your business as is, and maybe today I got a new client
Yeah,
with you.
for sure, for
So
sure. I think
we'll release your money in 72 hours if you work with us.
that's so great. I think it is not just a game changer, but it is a revolution you are bringing in. Trust me, because I know the pain points. I think बहुत मजा आने वाला है सर इसमें. I'm not just a target audience, but I'm already sold. So
That's
yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah. I think we are coming to the end of the podcast. I would also like to touch base on some of your entrepreneurship journey, because when you start something, you're not experienced, you don't have much patience, but I think when you start fresh, you don't know anything. And I feel, I always believe in one thing: when you don't have experience, sometimes you perform better because you have that freshness.
Yeah.
And now you are coming in, working in a established ecosystem. So this entrepreneurship journey it becomes lonely sometimes.
I'm a person who doesn't like to spend a lot of time alone, right? I like to be around people. It's just because when you're alone is when things start weighing onto you in terms of what decision you made. Okay, what effect will it have? It's not only affecting you now, it's affecting your team, it's affecting your clients, it's affecting your team's families. So, each and every agent or each and every employee you've had, their families get affected by what decision you make. Your company gets affected by what decision you make, your family's reputation. And I feel when I'm alone, a lot of that starts weighing on my shoulders. And so that gets a bit paralyzing in some sense. So what I try to do is, and what I would encourage people is, be close to your work. Keep smarter people around you. You should not be the smartest one in the room. There should
Correct.
be people who are smarter than you.
Correct.
That give you perspective. And I think that as a person for me is very important. It feels like I'm talking to my therapist, but yeah, for me it is something that I don't enjoy being alone as much, because maybe obviously I'm still young and I'm still in that entrepreneurial journey of growth. So at some point I may be content with the decisions I've made.
I think the only thing which I'm talking about being lonely is the decision making. So I'm always around the team.
Yeah.
I'm never alone, but I still feel lonely sometimes because the end decision is something which I have to take. Everything. So how do you manage your health? You have to work around since morning to night. Everything, because when I started working, the energy which I had before versus the energy which I have right now is quite different. Although I'm also young, I think. So don't you think that sometimes in entrepreneurship, if you are not healthy, you don't take good decisions? I mean, especially mentally.
Yeah.
You end up taking some bad calls.
Yeah, I think I haven't reflected as much on it. As I said, I try to surround myself with people that would give me good guidance. I have a mentor who's been very supportive and has advised me in terms of the decisions I've made. And that mentor is Whoop. So it's a good sort of mental health.
So
and
average train.
average strain is about 14, 15. Yeah.
Nice.
So today it might be slightly higher with sort of 10 people staring at me into giving these answers. But no, I have a good mentor. Yeah, he, when I started Anacity, Shujai is the mentor, and he essentially has experience for maybe 20 years or so in real estate, and I found a figure in him who could guide me in the right direction. And tell me when I was thinking I made the right decision, and then guide me that or be blunt to my face that it's the wrong thing that you've done, and you need to retract that decision. So one thing I would say is it's important to have a mentor, and two, it is maybe at least what's worked for me is don't reflect too much on the decisions you've made. Trust your gut, trust your instinct, but also surround yourself with smart people who can give you that perspective. Hopefully things do fall into place.
I think Anacare is something which I would like to know about, because I think I've seen that you like dogs.
Yeah.
I love dogs too. I have a pet, a beagle. And I also started working with an NGO helping stray dogs. So can you tell me about that also?
Sure. So yeah, I love dogs, and I think the entire office knows my liking towards dogs because every morning my dog comes with me to the office. So
Oh.
he's an official mascot. I think he's I don't know. We'll have to check with the team.
Oh.
Vritti, you want to check if he's there?
If you can get him, then
And he comes dressed up every day. So he comes
which
in.
beagle?
No, it's a Shih Tzu.
It's a Shih Tzu.
And
Oh.
he comes dressed up every day to the office. He has a nanny basically who is our house staff, but she'll not eat before he eats, so she'll only eat after he's done eating, and then she dresses him up every morning in the office, and his bag goes down before I have to carry my own bag down to the car. His bag will go, before sort of 10-15 minutes before. He's not there.
No worries, no worries.
Unfortunately, today he's not coming. But he must be having a busy day of meetings outside. But yeah, so I love dogs, and so even my dog actually was, somebody had left him outside my apartment,
Oh.
and so it's not that we went and purchased a dog. It was actually somebody that left him outside my apartment with a note. But Anacare, essentially, it started as a community initiative. There was a cat outside my building, which I believe had been run over by a rickshaw. I asked the security guard, "Ki isko, kya ho gaya?" And he said, "Nahi, wo kha rahi hai, pani pee rahi hai, and no need, nothing at all." And I could see visibly that she couldn't move, right? Possibly something with the spine. And so I said, okay, let me take this to the doctor. And so I took it to the vet, and I absolutely hate cats. But I took it to the vet, and the vet said that, look, isko maybe 2-3 days, at max 3 days. So isko aap road pe mat chhodna, right? Keep him in your house, because last 2-3 days you should give it a good life. I said, okay, now it's been 3 years. That cat is still there with me in my house. And so, to be honest, I genuinely don't have a liking for cats. So we took it to this community initiative called Yoda, right? And it's run by Priya and Akash from Vedanta Group. And what the CEO there, Dheeraj, had said is that, look, we have enough equipment. I said, what can we donate to you, right? Because you're doing a great job. So what can we donate? He said, we have enough equipment, we have enough sort of funding that comes in, we have enough food, but we don't have a space to take your cat, right? Because we are completely sort of up to the mark. And so over the next year or so, I thought about it, and I was in touch with Dheeraj, and, we wanted to donate food, and, we would do all that. But somehow I saw that, he still has that challenge of, he cannot admit newer animals or newer community animals into that particular center because it's only that much space, right? And so what we did is we then said that one thing we can do is we can provide the space and we can partner up with you, because yes, a lot of corporates would give, a CSR budget and, allocate some aspect of it. So we took a space in Khar, and in Bandra, we've taken a space where we do 1,000 trauma cases or sort of surgeries or rehabilitations every month. So this is your dogs, cats, anyone can bring any sort of a community animal there, stray animal, street animal, and we'll bear all the costs of their surgeries, of their vaccinations, of anything that you need. And, also if you're underprivileged or you cannot afford to care for that particular animal, we're happy to provide you with, that care. So it's something that we've been running now. It's been almost a year. It's really made a huge impact. That obviously seeing these cases are very sad. I won't talk about some of them, but during Diwali, we had somebody, close a dog's mouth and put a firecracker in there. And it's very sad to see some of these cases. But what's encouraging is that people actually bring. So, people will actually stop their car, pick that dog up, put it in the car, and then bring it to our shelter, which is amazing to see that, yes, there are people that are cruel towards animals, but at the same time, you have a huge community that cares for those animals. And we just want to be part of contributing to that community.
I think that's so good. I think, Ayush, what I'm willing to say, I think values over value.
Yeah, that's a good,
I think
good end to the segment.
And to be very honest, I'm not saying this for the sake of saying, to be very honest, क्योंकि मैं marketing करता हूँ ना सर, तो हमेशा लगता है कि marketing ही कर रहा हूँ. So why I'm saying this, because I think I'm a good observer, and now I can actually connect the dots about you being humble, you being down to earth. Yeah, I think the most important thing which I'm taking from this podcast is value. Thank you so much for that. So I'll just quickly do the rapid fire session. So the first one would be sole mandate or retail?
Mandate.
Tech or relation?
Relationships, definitely.
Dubai or India? अब तो
What's the
फंस
next
गए.
question?
But still,
Honestly, it's tough to choose. I do 50% of my time there, 50% here. So in a month, I'm there 15 days, I'm here 15 days. So it is genuinely a split. So it's tough to say between the two. But I can say one thing, that Dubai is the best Indian city.
yeah,
That
yeah,
is
I
something
think,
I
yeah,
can
you're
say.
right.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a good blend.
दुबई में भी इंडिया वाला ही feeling है.
हाँ, correct. Yeah.
Under construction versus ready possession.
Personally, ready possession, but under construction is where you can get high returns.
I think the best rates also you get.
Exactly. Yeah, correct.
The most common, renting or buying.
I think Nikhil Kamath had answered this question.
I want to know what you think about it.
I would say
Because Nikhil Kamath doesn't belong to real estate. Your piece of advice will be more valuable than
yeah,
him.
I would say buying.
I mean, I know we just did the rapid fire, but
Mm.
just can you elaborate it more? Why buying?
You know, I'm an emotional buyer, so personally, it gives you a sense of ownership. It gives you a sense of investment that, you know, it is something that even generations can continue building wealth out of. And that is a simple answer for me, which is comfort and, you know, just that sense of ownership.
That's so good to hear it from you, because that's what I think. People always talk about, in India, we are emotional people. We just need the shelter because it's ours.
Correct.
So,
Why should we ignore that?
yeah, I think you're right. Thank you so much, Ayush.
Perfect.
Lovely meeting
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much for
Phenomenal meeting
inviting
you.
me here.